Hello, fellow crocheters. It's Janet with bddpatterns.com. Thank you so much for stopping by today. In this video, I'm going to show you a really easy technique to sew up your double crochet stitches to create a seam for a garment or whatever you're sewing. In this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm sewing a side seam to our Dahlia cardigan. It's available on our website. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to need is obviously your piece that you're sewing, the pieces that you're sewing, a yarn needle. I like using these bent metal needles. I'll provide a link in the description below. And a piece of yarn that matches, obviously, and you need it to be, in this particular case, 4 times the length of what you're sewing. So I've got this here marked because in the pattern it tells you where to place your stitch markers for, in this particular case, the sleeve opening. So I'm going to measure 4 times, which I've already done. 1, 2, 3, and you can see there's 4 there. So 4 times for this because there's quite a few stitches involved when you're sewing up double crochet. Right, so we're going to start right at the hemline here, and we're just going to go into that first stitch of both pieces. And again, make sure that your pieces are, your right sides are facing one another because we don't want that disaster to happen, sewing the wrong sides together or a wrong side and a right side. Oh, we've all done it, but let's try to avoid that here today. Okay, now what you want to be aware of is, in this particular case, we're sewing up rows. Sometimes you're actually sewing up stitches. Sometimes you're sewing a combination of rows and stitches. Whatever the case may be, in this particular case, we are sewing rows. So we need to know how many rows we've got, and then, of course, what stitches we're working with. In this particular case, we have 7 rows of a ribbing stitch. So I'm just going to make sure that when I start and I secure this, that I'm securing it at least 7 times. In other words, I'm securing 7 stitches because that's what I'm working across. And all I'm doing right here is just going right in, making sure that the stitches are aligned, and you can see when you're doing that. At first, this little tail is a bit of a stinker to work with, but you'll get around it. It's okay. We all have to do it. All right, so that's 3. And again, this is just a guide, but at minimum, make sure that you've got this together because that's important. Okay, 5. And sometimes it's really good, depending on how fine your yarn is or what have you. Sometimes it's really good to go ahead and secure that first stitch twice. Okay, so now we've got through the ribbing. So now I'm going to talk about the meat of this video, which is how to sew a seam using double crochet. Okay, so again, my pieces are lined up. And what I'm looking for are 2 things. First, I'm looking for the stitch that we used at the end and beginning of the row. Then I'm looking for the turning chains, and then I'm looking for that next stitch of the next row. And that's what we want to line up here. See, we've got our 2 pieces, right side facing, and we've got our stitch from that previous row, and then down here we have the turning chain stitches of 3. So then we've got the stitch that we used to start the row. So that means we have a total of 5 stitches. So in order to secure this, because there is this open space here, you want to line it up because when you open up your garment, you want it to have a nice seam, but you also want to make sure that you're getting the maximum amount of security in your seam. So I just went through, and all I'm doing here is a binding stitch, which is just overlapping, and I just went through that first stitch. So now I know I have 3 more to go. When you're doing this, don't pull it so tight. You want it to have a little bit of leeway or ease, because if you pull it too tight, then your garment's just going to bunch up on the seams and they're going to look you know, crappy. So then just go, so that was, I secured the first stitch, then I did another stitch of the chain stitch. Okay. Now I'm on the second stitch of the chain stitch. Now I'm on the third stitch of the chain stitch, the turning chain. Now my next is just going to be where I secured the row on both stitches, and it's that easy. So look at your stitch, look what you're doing, and it'll just go together flawlessly. Then when you open it, you see, you really can't see the seam there. It just looks like it's all one, and that's what you want. You don't have to be perfect, but you do want a nice seam when you open your garment. And then when you go to wear it and you press it, it'll press out and it'll just look great. All right, I'll see you at bddpatterns.com. Have a great day.